everyone. Thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for your patience. On behalf of Lincoln Central Association, Park West Community Association, and Wrightwood neighbors, I welcome you to tonight's forum for Aldermanic candidate for the 43rd Ward of the City of Chicago. My name is Diana Fallhaber. I'm the president of Wrightwood Neighbors Association. Wrightwood neighbors, Lincoln Central, and Park West are all not-for-profits comprised of volunteers who work to make our neighborhoods the best possible place to live. Each is nonpartisan politically, and none of us endorses or supports any candidate for any elected office, including 43rd Ward Alderman. I'd like to acknowledge the committee members who have made tonight's forum possible. Kenneth Dotson and Kathy Jordan from Lincoln Central, Nancy McAndrew and Bridget Thomas from Park West, and Joe Perry from Wrightwood Neighbors. A special thank you to Nada Riley, who coordinated with Lincoln Park High School and made this all work. Thank you, Nada. I invite you to stop by our tables out front or to say hello to our various board members. We have name tags with our association logos on them. We'd love to tell you more about how we work with neighbors, local schools, and the city to enhance the quality of life for our neighbors. I'd like to thank Principal Michael Boraz of Lincoln Park High School for providing this wonderful space for this evening. Finally, I thank the candidates for joining us for this opportunity to learn more about their plans for the 43rd Ward. In alphabetical order, they are Leslie Fox, Rebecca Janowicz, Derek Lindblom, Stephen McKellen, Jacob Ringer, and Michelle Smith. We also welcome CAN TV in the back here this evening to provide television coverage of the candidate forum. Now I have some housekeeping before we begin. Each of our associations has actively solicited questions from our members for the last 2 weeks to be presented to the candidates, and we got many, and we got some really good ones. Note cards were available out front. Should you wish to add a question for the candidates, there will be people who will be walking up and down the aisles to collect the note cards should you decide you want to. We'll make every effort to include your questions as time permits, but we cannot and will not guarantee that it will be used. Members of the audience will be asked to treat all candidates as well as audience members with respect and refrain from comments or vocal anything because we want this to go as smoothly and respectfully as possible. Should an audience member become disruptive, we reserve the right to ask them to leave the forum. Due to the limited amount of time, please refrain from applause until the conclusion of the forum. Our moderator this evening is Kenneth Dotson, president of Lincoln Central Association. Mr. Dotson.
Thank you. I kind of feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be tonight. For the last 20 or 30 years, my family and friends have always said, Kenneth, you need to go back to high school. So here I am. We're going to have fun tonight, right? Yeah. How many people were at the forum last night? Wow, that's pretty good. Interesting crowd. So the audience was really well behaved last night. I have to commend you, and I'm sure they appreciated it last night, and I hope you'll be as kind to the candidates tonight and as respectful as they were last night. Now, for you guys, we'll be a little bit tighter on the time frames tonight, okay? I'm looking at everybody. So we're going to really enforce the time limits. The candidates have all agreed to the rules. A couple of things we drew for the order of opening statements, and we're going to follow a rotation throughout the evening. We have a matrix here that makes sure that everybody gets an equal amount of time, an equal number of questions, and rotates in the proper order to be equally fair to everyone. And prior to the forum, each candidate was asked how they wanted to be referred to, and you'll see that as I go through and ask the questions. I'll do my best to get it right. I know some of them pretty well, and I may mess up. But I'm going to do my best. So the drawing, the order of the opening statements, will be Steve McClellan, Rebecca Janowicz, followed by Alderman Smith, followed by Derek Lindblom, followed by Jacob Bringer, and Leslie Fox. You go last, and I will remind everybody when it's their turn next. So if you're ready with your 90-second opening statement, 90 seconds, and we have timekeepers. Where are the timekeepers? You see, hold up a sign. Well, red is, yeah, make sure, okay. Okay, so Steve, would you like to make your opening statement?
Yes, sir. So, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? No? Good evening. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. So, good evening. My name is Stephen McClellan, and I am running for alderman here in the 43rd Ward. And I'm running for alderman because I believe that this is the perfect time for our neighborhood to elect someone who's going to speak for the greater good of Chicago while prioritizing our neighborhood. I've been here since 1987, where I attended LaSalle Language Academy, and I've been here my entire adult life. I got here in 2005 as an adult. My background is I worked on the trading floor at the Chicago Board of Trade in the soybean mill pit for Open Outcry, and currently I run a nonprofit called Youth Producers, where we focus on arts, athletics, and academics for high school and elementary school students. My campaign is going to strictly be about how do we focus on Chicago by prioritizing the 43rd Ward. It is time for the 43rd Ward to have representation that's going to step up to the plate, speak about and be about reform before corruption happens and hits the media. I firmly believe that this is our time to come together. Chicago is in a crisis right now. I believe that we need accountability. I'm the kind of individual that believes in accountability, and I want you all to hold me accountable. So I will say this much. I'm currently on the LSC at LaSalle Language Academy. I have worked in every single school in our neighborhood except for one, and I am focused on trying to create some green space at LaSalle Language Academy. My time is up.
Thank you, Steve. Rebecca?
Good evening.
Which one's Dave?
Good evening. Can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Rebecca Janowicz. I'm delighted to be here this evening. I'm really excited about the mayoral campaign. It's such a refreshing thing not to know who's going to win. And I'm very excited to be running for city council. I don't believe the city of Chicago has ever needed an independent, hardworking, engaged city council than it does right now, going into the next 4 years of our life together as a city. I spent most of my life in Chicago. I raised my children here. They're now 33 and 36, but Mike Morris was their AP, and seeing him here this evening gave me a little report card pickup night anxiety. I am a lawyer. I worked for many years in a small local firm. Then I went into government work. I've served on a lot of boards and councils, including local school councils, the board of directors of a small housing project, a great range of experience. And I believe that it is my experience and my commitment to this community and to this city of communities that makes me a very strong candidate to be your alderman and to be a voice for our shared values in the Chicago City Council. I'm on leave from my job now, and if I was elected, being alderman would be my only job. And that's the end. It actually came out of a good place. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. Alderman Smith?
Hello. I'm delighted to see you all here today, and have enjoyed working with many of you. Together, we have accomplished a lot. When I became alderman, city council had no ethical oversight, no lobbyist limits, no independent budget analysis, no absenteeism task force. I've led on these things, and now we're going to remove the workers' compensation program from Ed Burke's grip. Continued change requires experienced leadership. Public safety is our #1 priority. We have 136 new police officers, 20 new surveillance cameras, and more on the way, and a new program to help youth. But the bottom line is, we have to stop repeat offenders. Today, there are 1,500 more kids under 18 in our ward. We invested over $60 million in education and began one school community. Our schools are gems, and business is solid. We welcomed almost 70 businesses this year. Lincoln Yards may get $900 million, we don't know, but taxpayers need something too. The public North Branch Park. I started that fight, and I want to see that fight through. My record shows that I'm one of the top 10 independent aldermen in City Council. This ward demands an independent voice, and you have one. And I've always fought for women, founding our Women's March, standing against sexual harassment, and voting against companies that don't respect a woman's right to choose. Well, that's a pretty quick snapshot, and I could go on, but tonight's for your questions.
Thank you, Alderman. Derek?
Hi. Is this on? Is this on? Hi, I'm Derek Lindblom, and I'm running for 43rd Ward Alderman. Thanks, everyone, for being here tonight. So I love this community. It's the community I met my wife in. When I finished school, I moved back home to Chicago and came here. It's where we had our first apartment, bought our first house, had our son. We're about to send him to the local public school, Oscar Mayer. He's almost old enough, but not quite. I've been involved on the executive board of the Wrightwood Neighbors, been involved in a lot of other local political and charitable groups. I'm going to be up front from the outset. I'm not your traditional aldermanic candidate. I started my career in the United States Senate, working on the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee staff at gun violence prevention. I went back to school, where I was president of the Harvard Law and Policy Review, and then moved home to Chicago, where I worked in the private sector, and then went to work for the mayor's office on the toughest financial issues our city faces. I know these issues cold. I worked on the pensions. I worked on the serious financial challenges we have. And let's be honest, we have real challenges. I then went into the private sector again, and I founded a health tech company that employs over 300 people. And with our founding group, we grew it to help over 100,000 people with type 2 diabetes. We have real challenges when it comes to violence, when it comes to our ethics and what we're seeing today in the ethical quagmire that is City Council, when it comes to our neighborhood services, and when it comes to the fiscal catastrophe we have waiting if we don't take action. Now is the time for change. It's a time to run at our hard problems and not away from them. I'm running to be that change for my community, for our neighborhood, for this city, and for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jacob?
Thanks, Kenneth. Hi, my name is Jacob Ringer. I'm running for alderman. I spent 3 years working for the CFO of the city. I was her chief of staff. I've worked both in and out of city government. Locally, I was a leader on the Lincoln Park Zoo Auxiliary Board. And I started running for alderman because I believe that we don't get the service that we deserve in this neighborhood. I quit my job in April, and since that time, I've knocked on over 7,600 doors myself. Many of you in the audience look familiar. At those doors, I hear about 3 things: crime, taxes, and vacant storefronts. I believe that the only solution to our problems is growth. We cannot cut our way out of our problems. We cannot tax our way out of our problems. I believe we need police officers in our neighborhoods, walking our streets as members of our community. On finances, I'm the only person on this stage that's brought revenue in without raising taxes. The digital billboard project on the expressway has already brought in $40 million into the city budget. On vacant storefronts, we need to align financial incentives to get rid of vacant storefronts and good old-fashioned service to bring businesses back into our neighborhood. I want to thank my family, my brother, my mom, my dad are here, Leo and Henry, not my dad, oh, that was weird. And I just want to say this is my dream job. I think we can grow our way out of the problems we have together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Leslie?
Hi, I'm Leslie. Wait, don't start the clock. Does this work? Hi, I'm Leslie Fox, and welcome to here. And I just want to thank all the neighborhood groups for making this happen. And the neighborhood groups in Lincoln Park and in the 43rd Ward make us stronger. I have a home court advantage tonight because this is my high school. I am the only candidate who sent 3 kids to public school, and I had the honor of being elected and serving on the local school council, and then recently serving as chair of the local school council. I have decades of experience working in city government. I ran the '94 World Cup and '96 Democratic Convention. I never raised taxes. I ran them to surplus. Private sector, we paid back the city. I want to be your representative in City Hall. I am so proud to be from this neighborhood. I think we can do so much better. I have the record of independence to make that happen. I have experience. I'm the only one who sat across from a mayor and told him no when I thought he was wrong. This campaign to me is about schools and safety. Schools and safety. We are all in this together. I hope you allow me to be a representative in City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we're going to start the regular questions. The first segment of this forum is going to deal with questions that are citywide. After that, we'll go to questions that are more specific to the 43rd Ward. But we're going to start with city questions, and we're going to follow the rotation. Most of the time, the candidates are going to get the same question. There's one or two where we may ask different candidates different questions. In the order that we are going to rotate in, excuse me for being slightly disorganized. Going first this time will be Jacob, and the question is, the TIF program was designed to provide development funding for distressed or underdeveloped neighborhoods. With that in mind, do you support providing TIF funds for projects such as Lincoln Yards? How much time? That is in 90 seconds, excuse me.
No, you're good. Ready? The short answer is not yet. So I believe that the Lincoln Yards TIF is a unique opportunity, specifically because the developer is going to be building the infrastructure at their cost and using the TIF money to pay back. It makes it very low risk for our neighborhood. The North Branch framework, which controls a lot of the money, means that most of the money raised from changing the zoning in that area will not stay here, and it's probably the only opportunity, one of the only opportunities this neighborhood has to get $900 million in infrastructure. On this particular TIF, I support, and frankly every TIF, I support the projects being laid out ahead of time, and that the TIF sunsets as soon as those projects are completed. I actually think all TIFs should be reviewed for relevance currently. When it comes to Lincoln Yards, I've been advocating for infrastructure. I'm excited that now there are 2 east-west vehicular bridges. There's no more stadium, and just today, Andy Glore, the head of Sterling Bay, committed to pay for a school, which I am ecstatic to hear because Oscar Mayer is already at 90% utilization. So there's lots of exciting updates going on this by the hour, and I'm always happy to report what I can learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek, same question, 90 seconds.
Sure, thanks. I think the key with these arrangements is you have to say, where's the money actually going? And it starts with, for this TIF and any TIF, $0 to developers. Let me be very clear. If a TIF money is going to a developer, that is a bad use of TIF money because it's your tax dollars being used to pay for someone's private profit. So let's start with this TIF and all TIFs with no profit for developers from the TIF money. And then let's limit the spend to 3 things that really work. Infrastructure, parks, schools. Now, why do we need those 3 things, and why does it matter so much, and why is it the best use of TIF? Right now, they're building a huge development there. I'm sure most of you know what's going on right below that at the Cortland and Armitage area with the Elston Highway entrance exit. You've probably spent a lot of time there, probably more time than you wanted getting on and off the highway. Now, the fact is we have to change it, but we can change it, and we can change it using this money. But we can only take this money if it's not going to the developers, but if it's going to us, because it's our tax dollars, and we deserve it for the infrastructure that helps our community. We were able to fix the intersection at Fullerton, Damon, and Elston. You guys probably remember that one. And we can do the same thing here. But if we don't fix the traffic with this project, we're liable to have a traffic nightmare. And that's what my focus is here, making sure we can get easily to the highway and from the highway so our community isn't trapped. So we have the green space and ball fields we need for our children and for us to enjoy and play on. And frankly, so we have the schools, so we're planning ahead. We can do this, but we have to do it right, and none of the money can go to private interests from our tax dollars.
Alderman Smith, and I promise you're not stuck on third. You're not stuck on third. You're not always going to go third.
Well, you know, we've been talking about this quite a bit, but in the larger context, City Council and the public should play a much larger role in TIFs in general. That's why I sponsored the TIF accountability ordinance that for the first time made even information about TIFs available. And I'm a sponsor of what's called the Back to Basics ordinance, which requires TIFs to actually live up to the things that they were designed to do. Now at Lincoln Yards, you all know that I've been fighting for our community's role in this development. And we've organized to fight for transportation for a park and for schools. And I'm glad that we're making headway, so we need to keep going. The public park on the east bank of the Chicago River would be a true public benefit. I believe that the developers will get all the infrastructure they need. It's in their interest. What we really don't know is whether the infrastructure that they want to build will be enough for us to actually escape Lincoln Park. And I think that it's important that we as citizens continue to keep their feet to the fire to make sure that we get what we need. And that includes, I hope, that we should press to not have this go to the Plan Commission next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Going forth is Leslie.
Okay. I'm against supporting this TIF right now because what's the hurry? We are already living in a traffic nightmare. We are already landlocked. I've been going to these meetings and I feel like we've been being played. For 8.5 years, TIFs have been used for private sector developers to ease their costs. They were created for blighted areas. They should be used for blighted areas. And until all of the questions we have as a community are answered, we should stop the TIF. Because what's the hurry? What's the hurry? We haven't looked at the plans. We need in this neighborhood congestion relief now, not later. And we are willing to give your money, $800 million, to a developer before those answers our question. It's not hard to say no. It's just expensive. It costs you money from donors, developers, and bankers who are going to make money from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you. I am opposed to the use of TIF funding in general. I'm sorry. I'll try. Wrong microphone. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Okay. I believe that TIFs may play a limited role in assisting blighted areas, although I have not seen that work very well. But overall, we need a much more open and transparent budgeting system for the whole city for all of the money that we're spending. And TIFs do not contribute to transparency or to helping people understand what's going to happen in the future. A TIF that had reached its 23-year limit has just been extended to provide further TIF benefits to Lincoln Yards. That's exactly the kind of bait and switch that relying on tax incentive programs lends itself to and tends to support. So let's stop with the TIFs and start looking at how much money do we actually have and how can we best budget it for the roads, schools, parks, code enforcement, clean water, and all the other needs that we have. The TIF process does not lend itself to transparency, and it's not useful. So we should stop using it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stephen?
So, I'm going to tell you guys up front, no. I am not in favor of a TIF coming to this neighborhood. We are in the city of Chicago where it's almost $1 billion that they want to spend in this neighborhood. Let's think about that for a second. Let's think about the city of Chicago and how much the city and other neighborhoods can use this money and use these funds for their infrastructure to help them out. But we want to bring it up here, $1 billion. I'm not for it. I will always be against it. I think for this neighborhood, I think a TIF can be a good thing, just not here. Other neighborhoods to help them out. That's it.
Thank you. No speaking from the audience, please. You guys have done pretty good on the 90-second questions. We're going to ask you one, see if you can get it. Hold it to 15 seconds. It's really a yes or no question, but we'll let you go up to 15 seconds. And this time, we are going to start with Alderman Smith. Do you support term limits for the office of Alderman?
No, I think that aldermen have institutional knowledge of their neighborhoods. You know, when there are term limits, the people who get to run things are the lobbyists, because they have institutional knowledge.
Time. Derek?
Yes, I support term limits. It's part of my 10-point ethics plan, and I think it's very important, and frankly, I think this is a differentiator for what you're looking for. With term limits, we're able to stop someone from establishing power in city council forever. You can't tell me year 47 is as good as year 3. We need fresh blood, and we need change.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I support term limits achieved through elections. Chicago needs to work on how candidates become involved in the electoral process, but we need to get people more involved in elections, but elections are the clear way to provide the most sensible term limits. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, I think that term limits are a great thing. I believe that fresh ideas, fresh perspective is what is needed in order to move the city forward. There's too much corruption going on with these aldermen who have been in here for 3 terms, 4 terms, 50 terms, and we need some change at all times.
Thank you. Leslie?
I support term limits because the consequence of not supporting term limits is the mess that we're all in. And I learned as a candidate trying to run for alderman that each term the aldermen are in, they make the rules harder for younger people and people not associated with big money to run. We need term limits and we need reform in the council.
Thank you. Jacob?
I support term limits for mayor and for chair leaders, not for regular aldermen. I do support cutting the council in half, which is why I circulated a petition, and I have it outside, which you can sign, to put the question on the ballot if we should cut the number of aldermen in half.
Thank you. So we're going to go to a 60-second question. It's really a yes or no question. We're going to give you 60 seconds to answer it. Currently, the fate of small and major developments such as Lincoln Yards alike rests with the alderman in which the development will be constructed regardless of the overall impact of surrounding wards. What is your position on aldermanic prerogative? And going first will be, excuse me for not being prepared on that, 1 second, will be Leslie.
Get rid of alderman prerogative. It is a way for aldermen to take care of their donors, and it's giving them too much power on public policy. There ought to be rules that everybody follows. They shouldn't be in charge of spending your money.
Thank you. Jacob?
I support limits to aldermanic prerogative when it comes to affordable housing, but I believe aldermen are the representative of this community and of every community, and they have the right to get community input and represent their community. That is done in this city through what we now call aldermanic prerogative. Zoning issues deserve sensitivity of all the surrounding neighbors, neighborhood associations, like the 3 associations that are running this event tonight. I do think there are reasonable limits. I think we should get rid of aldermanic prerogative when it comes to automatic renewals. I think we should put limits on signs. We don't need 6 or 9 months to allow a new business to get a sign. Robinson's Rib should not still have a sign outside of Cedar Palace. Someone should have been able to get a new sign.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I think it's unlikely that the aldermen will vote to abolish the privilege. I think we need a better bunch of aldermen, and I think that I have seen aldermen set the example, not always followed, of making sure that their use of that privilege is based on real, solid input from their constituents. And aldermen can convene the appropriate types of local planning groups to make sure that they get that input. And I think improving that type of process is going to give us a better result. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Jarrett?
Thanks. First thing I want to do is I want to agree and amplify with what Rebecca just said, which is the problems we have here, I think it's both structural and it's also because what you said, which is we need a new crop of aldermen. Now, where I might disagree is I think this is a bigger issue and it goes to how we run city council as a whole. We run a council where one person has complete control over pay-to-play development, where they can take in as much money as they want from the people who are making decisions, where they can call them one day for a campaign contribution and the next day to call and tell them their development was approved. It's direct bribery, and we need a change. So I'm going to do two things. Number one, I will put in an independent neighborhood planning committee. When I have any conflict of interest, it'll be referred to that committee for a recommendation. So you know I'm beholding to you, and we're beholding to this neighborhood, and not anybody has control over me. And the second thing is we have to rethink how we do city council. We're the only U.S. city that does it this way. We're the only U.S. city that has so many representatives, and we have to ask ourselves why. It's time for real fundamental change.
Thank you. Alderman Smith.
Thank you. So aldermanic prerogative means deference is paid to the alderman who is considered zoning matters. There's way too much aldermanic involvement in things like signs and certain basic permits that we should really, it would be great to get rid of. But aldermanic prerogative on zoning is a really good thing because it allows, that's how I do development, is to work with the neighbors to find out what they want, and then when we work that out, those become the requirements for the developer. We don't want our everyday neighborhood development in the hands of downtown. They're not necessarily going to care what we care about. But there are problems, which is neighborhood boundaries and citywide projects, and of course affordable housing. You know, like the Lucas Museum or the Obama Library or Lincoln Yards. You know, ward boundaries are artificial and change, but neighborhoods don't. And that's why we've been working so hard on the Lincoln Yards project, even though it's not in our boundary. And no alderman should set up discriminatory zoning. So there should be some limits on conflict of interest, but on issues of citywide zoning, everyone should have a say.
Thank you. We're going to do another lightning round question.
Hello.
Oh, Stephen. Excuse me.
This may be one of the only times I agree with the alderman over here. But I will say that we must elect officials who we can trust to do what's supposed to be done. And we do not do that. We get told what we want to hear, and we keep electing individuals who take these bribes, keep electing individuals who keep doing the Chicago way. So we have to elect individuals who will have an honor code amongst this aldermanic prerogative. So I am in favor of aldermanic prerogative. It just has to be used correctly.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, 15 seconds. And Rebecca, you get to go first. Do you support the addition of casino gambling as a revenue generator for the city of Chicago?
No, I do not support any casino. It is ridiculous to expect elderly people on fixed incomes and low-income people to pick up the tab for government. Casinos exploit poor people.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, I am in favor of a casino. We are in a financial crisis, therefore we need finance, we need money to come flowing into our city to help out with our pensions and to help out with other issues that we're facing. I believe that if we do have casinos, it must be regulated heavily.
Thank you. Leslie?
I I'm against casinos generally expanding in the city of Chicago, and the idea of a city-run casino, give me a break. Are you kidding me? But I am open to the idea of it having on the way southern border, if it generates economic activity and gives people jobs and it stops people from going to Indiana, perhaps.
Thank you. Jacob.
I support looking at all reasonable alternative revenue sources. One I don't support is the transaction tax. We are legally required to have all of our servers backed up in New Jersey, not mine, the boards. And the second that we pass a transaction tax, everything moves out of state.
Thank you. Alderman Smith?
I polled you, my constituents, about this issue, and the majority of you reluctantly agreed with casinos not located downtown as a method of helping to shore up pension plans. I agree with some other folks here that they're very dangerous and they have to be very well regulated. If they provide taxes to the city, we might have to do it.
Derek?
It's either the casino or your property tax increases. And my guess is enough of you have had enough property tax increases for a while, and you'd prefer a casino on our southern border right by Indiana at the Port Authority. We're just moving the casino a couple blocks, but those couple blocks being hundreds of millions of dollars to our pensions and our school children. And I think it's worth it. Better than the property tax.
Thank you. Okay. This again is going to be a yes or no question that you can have 15 seconds for. But Jacob, would you commit to being a full-time alderman if elected, not accept any outside employment or consulting?
Yes.
That was pretty definitive. Leslie?
Yes, this is a 24/7 job. It has to be.
Derek?
Yes, and not only that, my first ordinance would be to eliminate all side jobs in city council for everyone. It's a gateway to corruption. Whether you're taking money from a property law tax practice or your biggest campaign contributor, it is a dangerous precedent in how we get corruption in our city.
Alderman Smith?
I have a point of personal privilege here. I am a full-time alderman. When I started out, I got in over my skis a little bit. And it became an issue, my work with a arts foundation became an issue and a concern for some of my constituents. So I resigned my work at that nonprofit 4 years ago because what I valued most was the trust of my constituents. I'm not going to pass judgment on I'm not going to pass judgment on anybody else, but for myself, this is a point of real personal privilege, Kenneth. It's about something that I did, so I'm going to finish. I'm a reformer, and I've often challenged...
We can use your closing statement for these. We really have to be fair to everybody.
Okay.
Now, we're going to do something a little bit different right now. Oh, excuse me. Yes, you keep me on track. You guys keep me on track. I get distracted.
The question was, am I going to have another job?
Yes. The question is, it's not your turn yet. Actually, Stephen.
I did that for you, Stephen.
Thank you. Yes, however, I will still participate in my video shorts program at Francis Parker, but I would do it for free. And it's only Thursdays.
Rebecca.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great. So, shock me. We're going to do something a little different. I think everybody knows that the easy part of these forums is answering the questions. Because even though they don't know the questions in advance, they all have the answers. And the hard part is asking the questions. And so I'm going to take a break a minute. I'm going to let themselves ask themselves a question.
What's the time?
So in this box here, there's 6 envelopes. And inside each envelope, they're unmarked. This is Lincoln Park High School. Inside each envelope is a question. It's a different question. And we are going to go in reverse order of the way the question will be answered and let the candidate pick a question, pick an envelope. They're all different questions. They're designed to just let us know a little bit more about you as a human. So, Leslie, you go last on this question, so you draw first. You can shuffle the envelopes.
Oh, I trust you.
Okay.
Can I start now?
You may, but you can't start answering yet. Jacob, pick a question to ask yourself. Alderman Smith, you're in the middle.
Thanks.
Anyone you want. Let's see, who is next here? Would be Derek? Stephen, I may have y'all wrong, but it doesn't matter. They're all fun. Right. Okay. Stephen, you get to go first on this.
Okay, so,
This is a 60-second question.
okay. Using only positive attributes, how would you characterize your opponent to your immediate left? Okay. Well, the one thing I will say, this is all positive.
Only positive.
I'm just playing. One thing I will say about Jacob is that he's a hard worker. I've seen Jacob out on the street, and every time I've talked to him, he's been a very pleasant individual. I have a mutual respect for him, which I feel as if he has for me. And not only have I just seen him recently, and I hope this doesn't get used against me, but I've seen him in the past. So I know that he is dedicated to our neighborhood. I like his ideas, and I genuinely have a lot of respect for him.
Okay. Rebecca?
Of the candidates currently running for mayor, who do you currently support and why? Okay, initially I supported Lori Lightfoot, and I will always be grateful to her for her powerful intelligence and the stand she was willing to take against Mayor Rahm Emanuel. At this point, I will cast my vote for Toni Preckwinkle because I believe she's the candidate with the experience and the qualities of leadership that I've seen in action at the county, saving so much in health care dollars and taking initiatives on public safety. So I'll be voting for Toni. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Smith.
Of your recent predecessors as the 43rd Ward Alderman, which one are you most like and why? Well, you know, let's see, I think all of our predecessors still live in the neighborhood except for one. But the one who I most model myself over is Mario Oberman. He was an early reformer, stood up with Harold Washington against the machine, and really gave me inspiration on involving the community in decision-making, making sure that you reach out to everyone for their points of views and try to honor them, as well as steadfastly standing up for ethics reform. Marty, has gone on to be head of Metra, where his straight talk earned him the ability to turn that agency around and work with everybody. And I really strive to do that, to work with everyone, to hear everyone's concerns, and also to unquestionably do the right thing as it applies to yourself. And that's what I just did in this issue about this job thing.
Time.
I realized...
You can finish the sentence.
I realized I couldn't, I am calling on city council to have a higher standard all the
Okay,
time.
time.
So I needed to
Time.
challenge myself as well. Thanks.
Derek?
Okay. I have a super controversial question here. What is your favorite 43rd Ward park and why? So I'm going to come out on a limb with an answer. So I live half a block from Supera Park. It's a small play lot, for those of you who don't know it. It's on Racine between Lil and a little street called Draper. I probably spend an hour a day in this park at least. I got a little guy who's almost 2. We've explored every inch of the park. We know it quite well. Every slide, he just got big enough to do the big slide, so it's very exciting. And I think it's part of what makes our community great, right? It's these wonderful little parks. It's these wonderful little community havens where you get to know the people who go there on a regular basis. The other dads and moms who are up at 6:30 in the morning and can think nothing better to do in 30-degree weather than take their kid to the park. And I think it's part of what's really wonderful about living here and raising a family here. So yeah, I love the park. It makes a big difference in my life. And frankly, I think it's my son's favorite place on earth.
Thank you. Jacob.
What is your favorite 43rd Ward cultural or entertainment destination and why? So, because of some of the members of the audience and because I spent 2 years as the president of Lincoln Park Zoo, if I didn't answer this with the Lincoln Park Zoo, I think I would be in a lot of trouble. But I'm going to go one further and say not only zoo, not only the great work that it does, they just rebranded For Wildlife for All. They've focused on Little Village and partnering with Little Village because that's the neighborhood in our city that has the least green space per capita, and bringing kids and adults from there to the zoo. But they do so much work all throughout the world that people don't realize. They have vaccinated almost every domestic dog in Tanzania from rabies to protect the wild dogs in the Serengeti. They lead the way on research on chimpanzees, on many other things. Fantastic. I do have to give a quick additional shout out. Sorry to all the other restaurants, but Toro Sushi is probably my favorite. Mitch was at my wedding, and I have a very strong relationship with Toro Sushi. I used to live a block and a half from there. Best salmon in the city.
Time. Leslie.
Of the 5 other candidates, which one would you least like to face in a runoff and why? Ladies and gentlemen, can I humbly ask to win in February so I don't face a runoff? I have decades of experience. I have the passion, determination, and the will to make things change for the better in our ward if I start as your alderman on day 1, because I know how to navigate City Hall. I know how to stand up to special interests. So I am hoping and humbly asking for you to not put me in a runoff and elect me.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to questions that are specific now to the 43rd Ward. Bear with me just 1 minute. This is a 90-second question, and Jacob will go first. And this is verbatim. Every question we've asked so far, in one form or the other, came from the neighborhood. And this is verbatim from an email question. Having lived in the 43rd Ward for more than 30 years, it seems that instances of home and street crime have escalated. My husband's been held up twice at gunpoint, just blocks from our home during the daytime. I was with him when 2 gunmen robbed us at 1 p.m. at Eugenia and Hudson. If you were elected, how do you propose decreasing the surge of crime in the area and making it feel safe to walk in the neighborhood?
Thank you. So I've been going to CAPS meetings for 2 years. I have seen one of my other opponents there occasionally. I've seen the alderman's staff there quite regularly. I think we need to demand more police on our streets. I know my mailman. I know Teddy went to LSU. My 3-year-old Leo knows the street sweeper Bill. But even going to all those CAPS meetings, I don't know my police officer. The alderman mentioned that 136 new officers. I was really excited about that. And then I went and looked into it a little bit more, and it turns out that that's barely keeping up with retirement. Our officers come here after 18 months, 6 months in the academy, a year on the job, they're a member of FOP, and you can't move them around. So about a month before they hit that mark, they often get moved out of our district and into other high-crime neighborhoods. Our police get moved around from daytime to nighttime to beat to beat. Think about how hard that would be to start a new job every 3 months with new colleagues, new relationships. I think we need cops on our street every day, walking on the street beyond just marathon day. And I think we need to support them in our community. On Tuesday last week, I went to a CAPS meeting and told the officers about the 6 car window break-ins on my block. And on Thursday morning, 2 days later, during an attempted car window break-in, 7 cop cars showed up. And they arrested the people who did it. All we have to do is communicate with our police.
Thank you. Alderman Smith?
Well, crime certainly is our #1 priority, and I know the couple who wrote that letter, and we worked together at our public safety meeting last May, and it's very distressing. More police alone is not enough. There's a critical disconnect between crime and consequences. We have hired enough police to overcome this retirement problem, and we're going to continue to hire 100 more police every month. We've hired over 2,000 new police officers, and we've had about 970 retirements. So we're actually over that hump. I'm not going to comment on how the police train their people. I do know that when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the guys who stayed on the beat for decades and decades and decades were the ones who were taking bribes and working with dope dealers. But we did add 126 new officers. We've gotten new tools, more cameras. And today I was with Governor Pritzker when we signed the new Gun Dealer Licensing Act to help stun guns going to criminals. But it's not enough. Crime has to have consequences. We've seen over and over and over again when people are arrested and then they are released. And we arrest the same people over and over again. The new laws hiking penalties for gun criminals have never been used. And when we did a study of juvenile crime, we found that juveniles who were arrested with guns were released within 24 hours, and that 42% of those juveniles arrested with guns were arrested again within a year, and half for violent crimes. That's what we need to...
Time. Leslie.
So this message makes me a little crazy, because when you talk about crime and consequences, the consequences of voting for a budget that closed 5 mental health clinics and 50 schools without any community input are the consequences of teenagers on the streets committing crimes. Crime, what we need to point out is that more than 80% of murderers have not been caught because our detective unit has been decimated in the last 7 years. Every area of crime in our neighborhood is on the uptick because all of those police officers that are assigned to our ward are pulled to other wards. We have had police at our house many times. I've worked with police throughout my decades of experience. I've gotten high-level police officers at my house. I said, "How did I get you?" And they said, "We're the only people here. We need more cops on the streets. We need to bring back community policing. And as my friend Jacob said, we need to know our officers, and we need them to be present and available." Thank you. Schools and security. Safe schools equal better security. Strong schools, stronger security. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca?
We need to invest in the communities on the west and the south side in this city that are suffering increasing crime because of the lack of density there. Otherwise, we're going to just keep spending money after violence occurs. We know how to reduce violence. We know the holistic approach that includes public health that is going to help us break the cycle of violence. At the same time, in a neighborhood like this, where many people are not engaged in the behavior that adequately protects their own property, we need to work with the police to reduce the really preventable property crimes so that they can focus on increasing their rate of arrest in very serious offenses. I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about our low rate of solving crimes. I'm concerned about our low rate of actually convicting murderers. Those are the kinds of things we really need to work on. But we have to be careful to be realistic and understand that we're going to have to act on many fronts to resolve this problem as an entire city engaged in reducing violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, so first and foremost, I believe that, first of all, the Eugenie and Hudson, that's 2 blocks from my house, so that actually means a lot to me. But as far as trying to prevent that, we need to get rid of the stigma of cameras. We need more cameras so we can see what's actually going on. I believe that we do need to support mental health. That is very important. Mental health. I stressed this yesterday. Mental health. These people who are committing these crimes, they do not have the resources and they do not feel as if anyone cares about them. They need help. They need awareness of mental health. I will stress that. Guns. Let's really talk about guns. The guns that are being used are illegal guns. So legislation, while it is good and it's a positive for statewide or whatever they want to do with it, the guns that are being used are guns that are illegal guns. All right, and then last but not least, I believe that we need more beat cops walking the street so people can understand that the cop may be around the corner. Now, in that neighborhood, we do have a cop that walks. I don't know his name, but I see him every now and then. But like I said, I think we need technology, mental health support, and to try to figure out a way to get these guns out of these people's hands by giving them opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, this is a 60-second question. Okay, did I miss somebody again? Derek!
It's okay.
Man.
You got a lot of people. So, look, I think we're all feeling that our neighborhood feels less safe. And the stats back that up. We've seen more assaults, more motor vehicle theft, more sex offenses, more you name it in our ward over the past 3 or 4 years. And I think the reason we see these things and we know we have these challenges is because we're not making smart, thoughtful attempts at improving our police force and supporting our police force. So let me give you some examples. In New York, there's 3 murders for every 100,000 people. In LA, it's 6. Here in Chicago, it's almost 20. We know these cities have done things over the last years to reform how they train their police, how they support their police, how they help their police interact with the community. We know until just under a year ago, you could do a whole police career in Chicago and never get any training from the moment you left the academy till you retired. Now, unless you assume nothing's changed since about 1985, you're probably not making a smart move. And I think it was said a couple times here, it's important to repeat, our detective clearance rate on murders and shootings is abysmal. We're solving less than 5% of our shootings. To give you an example on murders, you are actually more likely to be sent to prison in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago if you're elected governor than if you kill a man. Something's got to change, and we can't keep doing things the same way. We're in real trouble here. We know it. We feel it in our neighborhood. We feel less safe. We feel less okay going out at night. Let's invest in training. Let's invest in mental health. Let's be smart about it.
Did I miss anybody?
Thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, this is a 60-second question. And another one, this is pretty much verbatim. Alderman Smith, you are first here. Over the years, some feel the 43rd Ward has lost its sense of community. What specific actions would you propose to reestablish a sense of community?
I think our society has changed quite a bit, from people sitting out in the stoop to people going out in their garages. And I think that has really, has isolated some people. And I think some of the things that are coming on the pike and have been done by our community groups have really led the way. I mean, I have to say that one of the most wonderful things that has started in our ward is the Christmas tree lighting that Lincoln Central is putting on. Those are the kind of activities that we want to encourage. That's why we are, pretty soon you'll see what is called an activated alley behind the McDonald's at Fullerton. You may have noticed there's a bright poster in there. There are going to be lights put in there. There are going to be things that will be programming. There'll be programming at Lincoln Common. We're working with the Lincoln Avenue SSA to bring community events along that wonderful avenue and revive it. So a lot of the things that we do as a community is to give us gathering spots to do that. As well, okay, that's it.
Time. Thanks. And I want to point out, our partner Christmas tree lighting with the Oz Park Advisory Council. So, Derek?
Sure. So, one of the things I think we want, and I think people here feel like it's more than just, this is more than just buildings. This is a community, and we want it to be a closer community. I think too often, through technology, through other means, and I say this as somebody who helped found a tech company, we feel further away from each other. We know our neighbors less. We feel less integrated community. And I think what we can do is we can act as aldermen not just in the legislative function of the job or the zoning function of the job or the logistics function of the job, but someone who brings people together, someone who creates those community spaces. And it's about creating events. Like in the 47th Ward, they do a bike ride every year. They do a cleanup at a school every quarter. We start thinking through, how do we bring people together to do something together? There's real issues with senior loneliness in our community. How do we bring seniors together? How do we connect seniors with younger students who might need mentorship? I think thinking of the aldermanic job not just as what are the sum of your duties, but as how do you bring people and create real connection in the community can make our community a better place.
Thank you. Rebecca?
34 years ago, I founded the Children's Book Fair, which continues to thrive and grow and change as storytelling changes and enters different mediums in Chicago. And that was interesting how it started. We were celebrating because we'd won a fight over a lease that a local bookstore was going to lose, and we turned that into a party, and the party became a fair, and in the fall, it'll be 35 years. And it creates the kind of opportunity for people to come together and celebrate the things that they really like and the things that they want to share with their children, and the things that grandparents want to share with their grandchildren, and it really turns people out in the neighborhood. It changes over time. What excites people changes over time. But if you can find family-related themes and that celebrate local institutions, I think you can really turn out people and have a very good time and build a real sense of community.
Time. Stephen?
So this is a question I've actually been thinking about for a very long time. First and foremost, I would give a lot to the neighborhood associations. I think that they are very important. I think that they will play a very, very important role in community and making sure that the people in the community are involved. And I also would like to see more events. I like festivals. I see a guy in here who owns Tandoor, and I'm pretty close with a guy who owns Chicago's Doghouse. So I would like to see a lot of food festivals so we can bring people out. I also have an idea of having a 43rd Ward basketball tournament that consists of all the schools in our neighborhood. Different things that are going to bring people together, community together, and it's going to highlight our neighborhood. And then, last but not least, I genuinely believe in a youth council for the 43rd Ward that speaks to the adults, and it's kind of sort of a mentorship program. That's just the beginning of what some of my thoughts are, but I genuinely believe that community is very important, and these are just 5 of the many ideas that I do have on how we can bring community together.
All right, this is going to be another one of those. Oh, you know what? I got to stop screwing up there. I'm so anxious to get on to this next question. Because the next one, that would be Leslie now.
I have a 30-year record of bringing people together. I created the Principal for a Day program where I got 535 businessmen to give up a day. That is such a great question. Our community seems so divided, and I think it is our leadership's fault, because what has happened is that schools have been pitted against each other. We are all in this together. I've been attending community meetings for 8 years, and I have seen decisions made behind closed doors that pit neighborhoods against each other. We can fix that by working together, by having every school sit down quarterly and talk about what you need. To shop locally, even though there's not a whole lot of retail left, we ought to be supporting what is still here. I think we need to build pride. I think the people in this community are the best I've ever met. We have made so many wonderful friends. We have such a wonderful neighborhood. I just think we need to do some community building and feel that we are all in this together.
Thank you. Jacob?
Yeah, thanks. So I found this community wonderful. I've been walking doors since April. Most people have invited me. Now that it's cold, I get invited into a lot of front steps, into front foyers. We have a wonderful community. I helped plan a big festival in this community, the Spooky Zoo Festival for the Zoo. Brings about 40,000 people together, largest trick-or-treat alternative in the city of Chicago. But we gotta fix our vacant storefront problem. Business licenses are down 20% over the last 8 years. Landlords' property incentives, financial incentives are misaligned. It is in their economic interest to wait for a national chain to come and rent a space and sit vacant until that happens. Crime is driving people out of our stores. Red tape? We have red tape everywhere, north and south of Diversity. Look at Southport Corridor. Look at Six Corners. Those are thriving communities that weren't here 15 years ago. We need an advocate in this neighborhood to fight for businesses.
Time. Okay, now we're going to get to that 15-second question. It's a yes or no, but you get 15 seconds. You'll see why I was very anxious to get to it. I don't know where these questions come from. Do you, and going first on this will be Leslie, do you believe that that traffic laws should be enforced for bicyclists the same way they are for automobiles?
Yes, and I'm a bicycle rider.
Jacob?
Yes, and we should institute a $150 fine on any Uber driver that doesn't pull all the way over.
Question was about I got you. Stephen?
Yes.
Rebecca?
I'm a pedestrian. Everyone should obey the law.
Derek?
I think this is a pretty obvious answer, yes. And I think we should make our streets a place where we want to be outside more, where we feel safe to walk around this neighborhood, and just like Jacob said, where we feel that's an active, vibrant retail community.
Alderman Smith?
Yes, and I think we have to continue our work to make these very old streets safer for both cyclists and drivers. We operate in a really narrow footprint on that front, and I struggle with the city to figure out ways to make that work. That's why when we did the Lincoln Common development, we're requiring them to put in full bike lanes to make it a little bit safer.
Time. Okay, I didn't miss anybody this time, right? Okay. This is a 90-second question, and we got a lot of people from the neighborhood that sent this question in, or variations of it. And going first this time is, let me just double check, will be Rebecca. Regarding the Lincoln Yards mega development, where do you stand on the current plans, the impact of density, the impact of traffic, and the impact of existing performance venues in the 43rd Ward?
I'm opposed to the Lincoln Yards development as it currently exists. I'm grateful to Blair Kamen, who explains a lot of it to me in terms that I can understand. It's too tall, it's too dense. I understand they've pulled some of the stuff about the venues that would kill the local music venues out, but then somebody else explained to me, no, it's really still there. So if, to the extent that it's still really there, I'm opposed to it. I think that we just need to do an awful lot of work on this particular plan to bring it down to a human scale, and that's really what I value most. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Yes, so number one, I'm a firm believer in development that fits the character of a neighborhood. Like I've been saying, I've been here since 2005, and I've noticed that it takes me a lot longer to get from Hudson and Menominee to Racine and Fullerton. So can you imagine what's going to happen when something like Lincoln Yards comes to the neighborhood and our streets are full of cars? As far as entertainment's concerned, I do not believe that a development should come in and take away from a business such as the Hideout, which is a venue that has been here for so many years. I'm completely opposed to that. And like I just said, as far as open space, it needs to be public and not private. I think that the people of the city need to be able to use this property, and And there are a couple examples downtown. There's a couple examples downtown where it started out to be something that was open to the public, but it's now gated off. And Mr. Kamen actually wrote an article about that a couple years ago, I think it was. So I am not really a big fan of this Lincoln Yards proposal, just to begin with. And I will say this though, I've always been against the stadium coming to this neighborhood. I know it's not there, it's not in the plans anymore, but for that to even be in the plans was ridiculous. So congestion is my biggest concern because I'm an individual who drives, and I noticed over the years how long it takes me to get from point A to point B, and it's completely different now.
Time. Leslie?
I don't know what the current plan is because we haven't gotten straight answers on so many of the issues. What I don't want to see is what happened with Children's Memorial and have it tied up in litigation. We need development. We need people to increase our tax base. We need smart planning. Smart planning saves money. But I can't approve a project or have an opinion when there are more questions than answer. And the only way to slow that down is to slow down the tip.
Jacob?
So I've been paying attention to the Lincoln Yards project for what feels like 3 or 4 years since we moved it out of a planned manufacturing district. I don't think this is a once-in-a-generation project. I think it's once in 5 generations. It's going to have a drastic impact on our neighborhood. That's why I met with Mike Kelly, the head of the Park District, last fall. I don't think anyone else on the stage has done that, to talk about a park. I have been an advocate of an east-west vehicular bridge, and I was excited to see one in Armitage. I'm even more excited to see a second one. I've been an advocate of getting rid of the stadium. I'm excited to see that gone. I've been an advocate for protecting our schools. I'm really excited about today's news. I hope that we are able to get a school in this development. Responsible development, bringing the community together, is the role that we are all applying for as public servants. I think this job is pulling people together, listening to all sides, making a decision, and then the most important part is bringing people back together and explaining to them why. I think that saves 3 to 5 years on the Children's Hospital.
Thank you. Alderman Smith?
Well, you all know that we've been working on this since the proposal to change the PMD and the framework came out. And we've been fighting to make sure that any development here somehow fits in our neighborhood. Our ward has told me that they are not opposed to the development in general, but they want to mitigate its impact on our neighborhood. So we have to have a buffer that buffers us from whatever ends up over there. And that's why we've been proposing this park. And you know that we've been fighting for this for 2.5 years. And we'll continue to do so. And I was really glad that when I talked to Blair Kamen, that he understood that there were issues with this development and helped him formulate his response that was in the Chicago Tribune. You know that I've been there for you on this development and will continue to work with you until we get it right, which means slowing down the process right now, demanding open space, and demanding, first and foremost, to actually see a plan. We've never had a development process where we have not actually seen the details of every building. The best model that we have for this development would be what was done years ago at DePaul University, when DePaul University had a master plan and there was a community agreement about it. Thank you.
Derek?
So, I think there's been a very smart comment on stage, which we don't know what the plan is, like you said, Leslie. And I think we're still learning what it is. There's some very important things we're fighting for. I think a lot of us were glad to see the stadium without an adequate traffic plan taken out. I think we've talked about a lot of this before, but we've got to fix the traffic issues around this plan. We can't get trapped along the, from the highway in Lincoln Park in some sort of traffic apocalypse. I'll just keep coming up with different words to use for traffic and bad traffic. But I think our real challenge here is planning and being smart and thoughtful, not only about this plan, but how it fits in our greater community, how it works with our traffic, our parks, and our schools. And it all comes back to planning ahead, right? It comes back to thinking through what's our school capacity going to look like, not today, not next year, but in 5 years. You know, Oscar Mayer's nearly at capacity, and it's trending over capacity in younger grades. We think we know we're going to have a problem. If we have to redraw lines or build a new school, let's do it now. Let's not do it later. I think it's smart to build more tax revenue, to build greater tax-producing areas, but let's do it in a way that works with our community, do it in a way that works with traffic, think ahead on schools, think ahead on parks, but do all we can to invest so we have, you know, we're stabilizing and hopefully not increasing again our property taxes, but instead expanding the property tax base. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we're starting to run out of time, so we're going to go to one 60-second question. It's important. I wish we could devote more time to it. I'll make sure I get the right one. And going first on this one will be Jacob. Some mayoral candidates have proposed varying ideas related to property taxes that would impact our neighborhood, which already pays some of the highest per capita taxes in the city and state. As Alderman, how would you approach the property tax burden and increases facing our neighborhood residents?
Yeah, so I don't support a lakefront tax. Let me say that first and foremost. I think we need to look at all alternative revenue. Again, I'm going to say I think I'm the only person on this stage that's brought revenue in without raising taxes, fines, and fees, or cutting service. I think we need to look at everything. I think we need to explore all alternative revenue that is possible. Importantly, I mentioned the transaction tax. That's not something that is possible to bring money into the city. We do need to look at casinos, at legalization, at a commuter tax, at everything that we can look at responsibly and reasonably to share our cost burdens. I don't need to tell you that we just finished a $589 million property tax increase. But in the next 5 years, by 2022, we owe another $586 million annually. We have to grow our way out of this solution. We cannot cut our way out of it. We cannot tax our way out of it. We must grow.
Time. Leslie?
I'm against any more tax increases. We've had historic tax increases on property owners. I am a property owner. We were just reassessed 40%. That is making this neighborhood unaffordable, and it will make it unaffordable for my children to come back here. And I do not believe that the answer is regressive taxes. I believe the answer is reforms. We have a new governor who's just sworn in, and he said he was going to work with the legislator and he's going to work on a progressive income tax. I support that. We also have a new assessor that will make sure that big high-rises, big, tall buildings in the Loop start paying their fair share so that people like us who live in the neighborhood stop being taxed again. Thank you.
Derek?
So I'm very passionate about this issue. Our campaign actually was the only campaign that came out against the lakefront tax before it was rolled back 24 hours later. We knew we had to stand against this immediately before it got any steam because it would have raised our taxes probably 50 to 100%. We've seen property tax increase after property tax increase in this ward, and too often we're pushing our longtime residents out of this community. This ward can't just be for the 1% of the 1%. There's many people who've been in this community for years who are now feeling the squeeze and not able to stay in this community. We need to attack our real financial problems. I have experience as the city's lead policy pension negotiator, working with 28 out of 31 cities' unions, the Chicago Tribune, the Crain's Chicago, and the Chicago Sun-Times editorial board to pass a real pension reform package agreed to by labor and the Chicago Tribune editorial board. That tells you something it's probably something its time has come. We need to make these hard decisions and work on these hard compromises. And we need to work on the toughest fiscal issues. We can't run away from them.
Alderman Smith.
Yes, these are the difficult issues, and I'm very glad that we're working with our Cook County assessor, which Fritz Kagi was overwhelmingly supported in this ward. This was his highest ward, and he is committed to working to try to be fair and that high-rises downtown, the 10 largest buildings in Chicago, are underassessed by $1 billion. And we look forward to attempting to reach some more fairness in our property tax assessments. But you know, on this lakefront tax thing, the fact is when that came out in the paper, I called Susanna Mendoza and said, what are you thinking? And then I called Fritz Kagi. And Fritz Kagi told me, Susanna called me. She said someone called her. And she dropped it the next day. As your alderman, I knew that that was something that was absolutely terrible as a matter of policy and fairness to our ward. So what we have to do...
Time. Stephen?
So I will never, ever vote to increase taxes, ever. I can promise you that. We need to come up with alternative ways to generate revenue, like we've all been saying up here. If it's the legalization, if it is coming up with the casino, whatever it is, we need to come up with alternative ways to raise revenue. I will never, ever, ever raise taxes. Now, I relate it to this. When I'm born and raised in Chicago, and when I was growing up, taxes were 7.75% sales tax. Now it's at 10.25%. That's something that I can't even bear that. So I can imagine what you guys have to face when you guys have a property tax increase. Going around, I'm listening to people telling me that they're paying 30, 40, 50 grand in property taxes. That's a lot of money. I will never, ever increase you all's property tax. Just like Derek said, people are getting squeezed out of the neighborhood, and I'm witnessing it. I'm seeing people who have been here 30 years no longer being able to afford their property taxes.
Time.
Causing them to move out.
Rebecca?
I think we have to be much more focused on reducing the city's expenditure when it's unnecessary. I haven't heard a lot of discussion this evening of ways that we can reduce our expenditure. We spend far too much money on overtime, whether it's in the police department or in other departments. This overtime is not going into public safety. A lot of it is going into, frankly, wasted court appearances that could be better managed, and other ways that we could find to reduce our expenditure. And I really think that before we tax poor people further, we should look at putting our fiscal house in order.
Thank you. So before we have closing statements are going to be 2 minutes in the reverse order of opening statements. We're going to ask one more of those yes or no questions, and then Nancy McAndrew is going to come up and make closing remarks on behalf of the host organizations, during which time the candidates can polish up their closing statements. And we're sort of really out of time, but the answers last night were so good on this question that I have to ask it. Do you support legalizing recreational marijuana? And let me see who's going first on that one. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get it right. Okay. Who went first on that last one? Jacob, is that you? Okay, so Stephen, you go first.
And the question is, again, could you repeat it, please?
Do you support legalizing marijuana in the city of Chicago?
Yes.
All right. Rebecca?
Yes, but it won't be smoked in my house.
Alderman Smith?
Yes, especially to have the tax revenue go directly to help pay our pension obligations.
Derek?
Yes, way better than raising our property taxes again.
Jacob?
Yes, but the federal government needs to figure out how they can take credit cards, so they have to stop moving cash around with armed guards.
Leslie?
Yes, it will save money, and it will bring in money, and I think we should welcome them in our neighborhood and our empty retail, and maybe it will lead to some more restaurants.
We finally got unanimous agreement. So Nancy McAndrew from Park West Community Association is going to make very brief closing remarks on behalf of the community organizations hosting tonight, and you guys get to work on your closing statements. You get 2 minutes apiece.
Good evening. On behalf of Lincoln Central Association, Wrightwood Neighbors, and Park West Community Association, I want to thank everyone that came tonight, and I also want to thank people that made this possible. I'd like to thank Lincoln Park High School, I'd like to thank the principal, and I'd like to thank the candidates for participating tonight, all 6 of them. And the audience, I would really like to thank you for behaving so well. There was a little nervousness, but everyone did a nice job, so thank you. I would like to encourage everyone to follow the debates, to keep up with not only the candidates that you like, but all the candidates, so that when you vote either early or on February 26th, you make the best choice for the candidate that you've decided is your choice for candidate. I'd also like to encourage everyone to participate in community associations. Neighborhood associations make communities stronger, and we've talked about it tonight, but really it's community, and people coming out tonight for an event like this is really a wonderful thing, so thank you. And as much as we were happy to see you, we'd like you to take everything you brought with you, home with you, papers, pens, anything that you brought with you, please take it home with you. And then Ken is going to take over.
Thank you, Nancy, and I also want to say thank you to the audience. You guys have been remarkable. It's not always my experience. People are as polite and focused on what the candidates have to say as you have been tonight. Thank you very much. So the order in which the closing statements, they're 2 minutes. Leslie, Jacob, Derek, Alderman Smith, Rebecca, and Stephen.
Ken, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone for being here. In a school that I have spent thousands of hours sitting exactly where you are. I am running because I love this neighborhood. I was born here. I then brought my kids here and raised them, sent them to public schools. I want them to have a neighborhood where they can live, they can afford to live, raise their kids, and have safe streets and strong public schools. That's why I'm running. Tonight, I ask for your vote, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I want to say we've had a lot of talk about on day one what people would do. On day one, if I was elected, I'd do the same thing I've been doing for the last year, talking to you, my neighbors, and finding out what your issues are and trying to solve them. I have a really long to-do list. I hope to earn your support so that I can do that. Tonight we've talked about a lot of ideas. I'm excited that this election is shaping up to be about ideas. This neighborhood wins when that happens. But I have to say, it is time to end the talk and get results. On my table outside, we all have a table. You can grab safety numbers for your garage door. Every CAPS meeting I've been to over the last 2 years has recommended that. You can sign a petition to cut the number of aldermen in half, put that question on the ballot. Let's take action. Let's fight for our neighborhood. Let's grow our neighborhood together. This is my dream job. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thanks to everyone for coming, and I want to thank Kenneth for moderating and all my fellow candidates for coming here today and talking to you about our ideas. So, we've talked about a lot tonight, but the one thing I think we haven't talked enough about is just how severe the challenges we face as a city are. We've got $1 billion due in the next 4 years in additional payments. We've got violence challenges both in the city as a whole and increasingly in our neighborhood. And we have ethics challenges where we have 3 aldermen under indictment right now alone. And we know we have a culture that hasn't changed of pay to play, of aldermanic side jobs, of tradition run amok in our city council. We have to stop these things. We have to stop rearranging the deck chairs. There's a hole in the boat. We need to fix it. And to do it, we need real change. We keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's time to elect a different kind of alderman. It's time to make real change in our community and our city by running at the hardest problems and not shying away from them. There's so much we have to do with taking on the biggest challenges, like pensions, like our financial obligations, like dealing with the city violence that threatens our community. And if we don't deal with these challenges, if we stay back, we'll regret it, because we'll see the harm to our neighborhood long term and perhaps sooner than that. There's so many challenges, but we can do it together. I have a record of negotiating on the toughest issues. I have a record of tackling our toughest challenges, and I have the boldest ethics plan of any candidate in the city. It's why I was endorsed by Dick Simpson, the leading ethics scholar in the city. We have to make changes today. Now, it's not just about small, marginal changes. It's about rethinking how we do government, how we support you, how we tackle our violence, how we tackle our ethics, and finally making the deep-seated financial structural fixes that Chicago needs. We can't nibble around the edges. We need real change.
Okay. Alderman Smith.
Thank you. The decision in this election is, do we want to continue to build on the progress and the momentum that we've made, or do we want to start over? In the face of a new mayor, do we want to have someone who has to learn their way around or make no relationships, or is ready to address the problems on day one? I'm on the front line of fighting for reform since I got this job. I created the first ever independent budget advice for our city council. I expanded the Inspector General's power, and I forced basic workplace controls to make city employees accountability and save you money, this police overtime issue. Cleaning up government, smart decision-making, and saving taxpayer dollars. It isn't about trying to sound new. It's about doing the work that's needed to get results. On crime, we've been working in the city. We are doing new training. It's part of our police oversight that we are all planning on doing. And these things are in place right now. We have new technology. Our community, we work with you all the time on CAPS meetings and having safety meetings, and passing the laws needed to keep people who are offending in our community from doing it again. Those are the challenges. On our so-called vacant storefronts, I don't know if anyone remembers 2011, but our vacancy rates now were 33% on Lincoln Avenue, 11% on Armitage, and they're down to 2% and 3% on Lincoln Avenue, and Clark Street is in half. We have a few vacant storefronts on Halsted. Well, we had them under construction for a year and a half. I'm very proud of our vacant storefront strategy and the fact that Armitage Avenue is now the premier place in Chicago for clicks to bricks retail, according to the Chicago Tribune. So I'm running to finish the job that we started, to finish the job of real ethical oversight.
Time.
And it's an honor to represent you, and I look forward to it again. Thank you.
Rebecca?
Thank you. To begin with, if passing laws ended crime, it would have ended with the 10 Commandments. If we're going to crack down on crime, we have to crack down on the causes of crime. The county has set an excellent example with the expansion of behavioral health care, including mental health treatment and drug treatment available in the community. We need to expand and support that. On the gun issue, I look to my old friend Kwame Raoul to sue Indiana. Indiana is the source of the vast majority of guns seized in crimes in Chicago. They sell guns out of the back of station wagons at gun shows. And finally, I think we should look at strengthening public transportation as a big part of the solution. First of all, remember, everybody you get on the L is not ahead of you in traffic. And we need to do a great deal of work with the public transportation to make it more attractive and make it more of a real option. And that can also be used to support employment efforts that serve our struggling communities. So those are a few of the thoughts that I have for practical solutions. That's my focus, and that's the focus and the track record I'd like to bring to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen?
Excuse me. All right, so first, before I even get started, I want to say thank you to my mom, who is in the crowd right now. Mom, can you raise your hand, please? Pretty please, just raise your hand. There she goes. Now, real quickly, she taught at LaSalle Language Academy, which is the reason why I'm even here. And I raise that up is because if we're going to go on a route of being the only candidate, I'm the only candidate that has spent K through 12 in CPS. I'm the only candidate that has sat on an LSC. I'm the only candidate, I'm sorry, one more, I'm sorry, but I'm the only candidate who has, I am the only candidate up here who has hired a principal, who has interviewed a principal in the 43rd Ward. Thank you, if I can finish. So I'm your local option. I'm an individual that cares so much about this neighborhood because it provided so much for me. I'm a person that wants to step up to the plate and really get the job done. The first politician I ever knew about was a man by the name of Harold Washington. And I understood the chaos that he had to go through in order to get half the things he wanted to get done. We need representation that's not going to act like the Vidoli Act 29, but is not going to be afraid to step up and speak about real reform and not to wait until someone is being indicted in order to speak up. I'm hearing way too much of that. For the last 3-4 years, I've been going down to council meetings on my own. I do not get paid for any of this. I have never received $1 to do any civic engagement, not $1. So if you guys want fresh perspective, I'm your candidate. If you want the same old, you might want to pick someone else that's sitting down right now. Now, if I can just rephrase this one more time, I've worked on an alley to get fixed, the only candidate up here who's done that, except Michelle Smith. I will give her props with that. We've been meeting for 3 years to do so. The Hudson Cleveland Alley. And I will repeat again, I am the only candidate up here who has hired a principal here in the 43rd Ward. My track record speaks for itself, and I want you guys to research my track record. Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up just 2 quick closing comments. I want to thank the candidates for being respectful of the time limits. You've been great. I really do appreciate it. Secondly, again, we apologize. We couldn't get to all the good questions. There's a lot of them we just simply did not have time to do. But there are a number of other debates in the 43rd Ward in the coming weeks, and I'm going to submit the questions that we could not ask to the other organizations hosting events, and hopefully some of them will get included there. Thank you so much.